Welcome back to our news bulletin. As the global death toll from the new coronavirus crosses 13,000, 1 billion people worldwide are confined to their homes. Nigeria and Rwanda have implemented a lockdown, while Pakistan has shut down all shopping malls and eateries after a spike in the infections. Details from the world in this report.
The raging COVID-19 epidemic has forced lockdowns in 35 countries, including Australia, the US, and Europe. India has imposed a 14-hour-long curfew to limit the fast-spreading coronavirus epidemic in the country, while Cyprus, Gaza, Angola, Eritrea, and Uganda have recently joined the unfortunate club, reporting their first infections. Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez warns the worst is yet to come.
Unfortunately, the worst is yet to come. There are still hard days ahead. We will still have to receive the impact of the hardest, most damaging wave, which will put all material and moral capacities to the limit, also our strength as a society.
But there appears to be hope, as China reported only one new domestically transmitted case of the COVID-19 after 3 consecutive days of no new cases. President Xi Jinping, after successfully bottling the pandemic at home, has called the leaders of France, Germany, Spain, and Serbia to offer support. The World Health Organization, too, sees China's containment of the outbreak a ray of hope for the rest of the world.
It's a message of hope. It's a message that this virus can be suppressed. We can break chains of transmission. It takes a huge effort. It takes an all-of-society effort. It takes coordination. It takes solidarity. It takes activated communities. It takes brave health workers. It takes supply chains that work. It takes commitment. So I think there's a message of hope there from China.
More than a third of Americans are in various phases of lockdown, with more states expected to ramp up restrictions.
Meanwhile, the US and China continue sparring over the coronavirus pandemic, with Beijing accusing Secretary of State Mike Pompeo of lying through his teeth. This comes after Pompeo said China wasted valuable days after identifying the virus by letting hundreds of thousands leave Wuhan in an interview.
He said the Chinese Communist Party put countless lives at risk as a result of its poor response to the coronavirus. Responding to the allegation, Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Shunyin voiced anger on Twitter. In a tweet, she said as WHO experts said China's efforts averted hundreds of thousands of infections. She said China first told the US of the virus outbreak on 3rd of January, with the State Department alerting Americans in Wuhan on 15th of January. In her response, the State Department spokeswoman claimed that by 3rd January, Chinese authorities had already ordered COVID-19 virus samples to be destroyed. The already tense relations between the two world powers have worsened over the pandemic. China has appeared to bring the pandemic under control, which has severely disrupted life in much of the world.
In India, thousands of city migrants are returning to their villages as their livelihoods collapse in the wake of the new coronavirus. This has raised fears the pandemic could spread to rural areas in one of the world's most densely populated countries. More in this report.
The number of coronavirus infections in India has crossed 290. 52 of these cases were detected in the western state of Maharashtra, where all shops and offices have been closed till the end of the month. This has caused a massive economic shock, hitting migrants from the rural areas the hardest. These people are now headed back to their family homes in droves, raising concerns about increasing the outbreak's spread.
The place where I used to work has been closed till March 31st, so that's why we are going to our homes.
There's already a crisis at railway stations where passengers have congregated in large numbers, turning them into a possible hotspots of infection.
We appeal to the people that they should not gather unnecessarily at station premises and ticket counters, and they should instead book tickets online. And they should not form a crowd at the stations by arriving before the scheduled departure of the trains.
The country's COVID-19 death toll stands at 5, But currently, India is only testing 90 people a day, an extraordinarily low number for the world's second most populous nation. Experts have warned the consequences of this approach could become horrifyingly apparent in the coming days. A country of 1.3 billion people with weak public health care in its rural areas is a disaster waiting to happen.
Moving on, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's curfew is depriving occupied Kashmir of food and medical facilities. Speaking with his German counterpart Heiko Maas over the phone, Qureshi said Indian atrocities in Kashmir continue despite the COVID-19 pandemic. The foreign minister said developing countries like Pakistan should be given relief in debt payments. He also called for the lifting of international sanctions on Iran as the country struggles to fight the coronavirus. The German foreign minister said the matter will be raised at the upcoming G7 Foreign Ministers Conference. Both ministers also decided to continue bilateral consultations on the situation. Meanwhile, India's internet ban in occupied Kashmir has hit education as students fail to send admissions and take online classes. The valley has been reeling under curfew and clampdown for the last 231 days. Talking to media, students said they cannot apply for studies outside the valley because of internet issue. The students said many of them started online classes, but internet suspension on August 5th has halted these courses. They said in the name of national security, Indian government is ruining thousands of careers. The communications blackout has already hit the health sector of the valley after it reported its first coronavirus case. The doctors and health workers have asked the Indian government to end communications blackout to counter the epidemic. Moreover, in India, protests continue against the Discriminatory Citizenship Act despite curfew and coronavirus threat. The Indian government has announced 14-hour-long curfew across the country today in a bid to curb the spread of COVID-19. Women at Shaheen Bagh in New Delhi have refused to end sit-in despite the government's ban on a gathering of over 50 people. Talking to media, the organizers said not more than 50 women are staging a protest at any given time. Meanwhile, protesters at Bhiwandi city in Maharashtra state have also announced not to end the sit-in. The organizers said there will not be a large gathering, but only 5 healthy women protesting at a time in Bhiwandi. In another news, UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres has called on the warring parties in Libya to lay down arms amid the coronavirus pandemic. In a statement, Gutteres said Libyan rivals must accept the draft ceasefire agreement negotiated by the Joint Military Commissions in Geneva last month. The UN chief said Libya already has a dire humanitarian situation and the COVID-19 pandemic is spreading. Gutteres urged the parties to join forces in addressing the threat and ensuring unhindered access of humanitarian aid throughout the country. Yesterday, Washington backed the UN-facilitated dialogue among warring sides for a lasting ceasefire. In Guinea, several government offices, schools, and a police station have been attacked to destroy voting material. The mayhem occurred as Guineans are set to vote today amid mass protests against the move, coronavirus, and possible internet cuts. President Alpha Condé has delayed the vote for a new constitution, which was earlier scheduled on March 1st. Attackers targeted a police station in the central Mamau region, tearing up voter lists and ransacked dozens of ballot boxes. Local officials said 2 public schools that were supposed to operate as polling stations were also burned. The attackers also torched several other administrative buildings in the north and southern part of the country. Security forces fired tear gas on the protesters. Earlier, UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres said he hopes for peaceful elections in the country. Slovak President Zuzana Kapitova has appointed Igor Matovic as Prime Minister. The new premier will lead a center-right government coalition after the February elections swept anti-graft opposition parties to power. The government handover comes as the Central European country battles the spreading coronavirus pandemic. The virus has put Europe on lockdown, forcing Matovic's 4-party coalition to agree a cabinet quickly. Merovich received significant support for his pledge to replace many ministers from the previous government. His anti-corruption party captured 25% of the vote in February's elections. In Greece, a 5.6 magnitude earthquake has jolted northwestern Preveza. The quake toppled older buildings, cracking walls and tossing objects from shelves. In the village of Kanalaki, older stone buildings collapsed and houses suffered cracks in the walls. Police said 2 women were slightly injured from falling objects, but officials said no other serious injuries were reported. The country's top seismologist said seismic activity in the area will be monitored for the next 48 hours for aftershocks. Mexico City has banned the use of plastic bags. The decision aims to reduce the daily generation of solid waste. The step has received a positive response from Mexican citizens. This report has further details.
Mexico City is the world's top garbage generating capital, producing 13,000 tons of solid waste daily. 15% of this garbage is comprised of single-use plastic. As a first step, local authorities have banned the use of plastic bags.
I prefer to take my trolley or my bag, another cloth or coarse cloth bag, and I avoid being given any plastic bags as much as I can.
People have accepted the ban, preferring to bring their own reusable bags with them when they shop.
This is the Mexican basket that represents the use of fibers and is part of our heritage. It is carried this way and it allows you to counterbalance the weight. They are resistant and durable.
State officials say everyone must fight the country's harmful addiction to plastic.
We also need to re-educate ourselves. And the way to re-educate ourselves is to look back to the origin. And this beginning is full of richness and proposals made by the original peoples.
Authorities and citizens agree that the single-use plastic has caused great damage to Mexico's environment. Whether they'll be able to kick the plastic habit once and for all remains to be seen.
We have a lot more coming up right after this short break, so stay tuned. Welcome back. A Malawi-based drone academy is teaching young Africans how to use the technology to support humanitarian and development projects on the continent. Students do not just learn how to fly drones, but also how to build them from scratch. More in this report.
Africa is a continent prone to natural disasters that's dotted with isolated communities. This makes drones an invaluable tool. They can be used to monitor crops, deliver medical supplies, and track wildlife. Ethiopian aeronautical engineer Lydia Elias has dreamed of using drone technology for this purpose.
After me learning, I try to teach my people I also have an aerospace club, so I'm trying to transfer this knowledge to the students that are fellows in my country.
Ladia is a part of the school's first batch of 27 students. Over the course of 12 weeks, they will learn how to build drones, fly, and use them to collect data.
For a short time that I've been here, I've been able to create this drone because this drone is the drone which I made from my own ends through the use of provided aided materials. We provided all these materials and how to go about. Then I followed all the procedures until I make this drone.
The project is a part of wider UNICEF initiative to help young Africans gain crucial skills for the 21st century. The academy plans to train 150 students by 2021.
In Ethiopia, the government is trying to attract foreign investment by offering cheap labor in textile factories. The country is looking to follow in China's footsteps by building a strong manufacturing sector to offer jobs for its young workforce. But despite high unemployment, young Ethiopians see things differently. Watch this report on what they have to say.
When Zeman Zarihun landed a job at a textiles factory in southern Ethiopia, he thought he had won a ticket to a better life. But just months later, he resigned.
It was very difficult. I suffered a lot at this company. We were made to work long hours for a laughable salary. It was exhausting.
These conditions have put off many more workers, feeding a growing disenchantment with the country's drive towards industrialization. Earning an average of just 23 euros per month, textiles workers in Ethiopia are among the worst paid in the world.
If wage is high and investment doesn't come, not new employment is going to be created.
And many manufacturing bosses are happy with the government's approach.
I never seen what we are getting the support from government of Ethiopia. I never get anywhere else.
Many of the workers being swept up in Ethiopia's drive towards industrialization come from rural and farming backgrounds. And so the concept of organizing into formal trade unions is taking a while to get off the ground. But things are gradually changing.
In the near future, we establish, I'm sure that no more than 2 months or 3 months, we establish a labor union in this industry park.
But it will take time for these unions to fully form and start exerting serious influence. And with youth unemployment still high in Ethiopia, factories have no problem replacing the disgruntled workers who decide to leave manufacturing behind.
The demand for lemon, ginger and garlic in Ethiopia's capital of Addis Ababa has risen significantly since the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic. Details in this report.
Africa was slower to feel the impact of the coronavirus than Asia or Europe, but over 33 African nations have now reported more than 600 cases. Shoppers at the Atikelt Tira vegetable market in Addis Ababa can be seen filling their bags with lemons, ginger and garlic. The three ingredients are a component of the traditional drink dawa, meaning medicine in Swahili.
This is naturally rich in vitamin C and full of natural herbs like lemon, ginger, garlic, honey and seasoning flavors. I often use it to recover from the flu, and by the same token it will certainly help me fight corona as well.
This has led vendors to hike the prices since the outbreak of COVID-19. Sellers, however, say they are serving the public by providing produce needed for medical purposes.
You won't see a lemon seller as such now because they're being hunted and arrested, accused of hiking prices. But you shouldn't blame them because the wholesalers have increased the prices. We're trying to help the public because these are wanted for medical purposes. We didn't increase the prices too much, it's just a bit.
The virus had infected more than 300,000 people globally and killed over 13,000.
Bright northern lights dance in the skies above Finland's northern Lapland region, putting the nature's best on display. Spring is one of the best times to see the northern lights, also known as the aurora borealis. This is because of augmented solar wind activity taking place in the Arctic Circle at that time of the year. Footage of the aurora was captured by an enthusiast from Rovaniemi, the capital of Lapland. The city is also known as the official home of Santa Claus. Russian energy giant Rosneft says cooperation between the OPEC and some non-oil producing countries has become meaningless. In a statement, Rosneft head Igor Sechin said that the OPEC agreement means little in wake of the US sanctions and COVID-19. He said Russia has to maintain its market share oil. Sechin said the US became the world leader in oil production following the OPEC's decision of not cutting production. The close associate of President Vladimir Putin said that the early March meeting caused oil prices to fall to the lowest level in 4 years. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.